Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first 2026 episode of Baseball FM. It's not radio, but it's pretty good. Next best thing, I would say. Max, how are
Always
we doing
true.
today?
I'm doing good. We're recording this at 8 p.m. In
Mm-hmm.
24 hours. Regular season starts. Can't wait.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I for one am. It's the first opening day in a while. It's not in some random country, Japan, Korea, Australia. Any of those. Um, I'm definitely looking forward to watching a baseball game that is being broadcast at the same time as I'm watching it, and not having to wake up at 6 a.m. to watch the first game of the season like I have the last few years. But definitely, I would say we've been spoiled with baseball so far this year already. We haven't even gotten to opening day, and we've already been spoiled. And by that, of course, I mean the World Baseball Classic. I think it's the thing that everybody is talking about in the baseball world right now. Even still, with opening day coming up, I know I absorbed as much of that content as I possibly could. Watching some games early in the morning, watching the highlights when I first wake up, following the tables, probably knowing more about run differentials than Mark DeRosa, just because I watched the highlights off of YouTube more than anything else. But yeah, Max, what was your overall thought of by far I would say the most successful World Baseball Classic to date?
Loved it. Loved it. I was in the same boat as you. Before work, I wake up at 5 a.m., set my alarm. As soon as I turn on the TV, get my coffee ready, I'm watching Team Australia versus Team Korea and Japan. Everyone thinks I'm crazy for it, but I don't care. It's great. It was great baseball. Team Australia was really fun to watch this year. So many great moments in the WBC. There's a lot to count. I mean, the big one that starts out for me is that Czech pitcher, Andre Satora. Satori, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He was great in 23. The fans gave him his flowers in 23 in Tokyo. They did so again. He struck out Shohei Ohtani again, like he did 3 years ago. So that was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think the standing ovation in the Tokyo Dome, that's going to be in the MLB Network promotional package for a few years now. Just talking about the greatness of baseball, but I think I, watching that on the highlights in the morning, seeing that live, all those different things, it sort of made me think about like what moments in baseball am I going to tell my grandkids about? What moments do I think like would I what moments would I show to someone if I wanted to get them into baseball, or if I if someone was like, "What's so great about baseball? Why should I like baseball?" I think that's given the context, even without the context. I think just as a human being, you kind of feel for him at the moment. It almost feels like a movie. It really captures your attention, and I think it really does show the great thing about baseball, which is to say, any given day, anybody can be a hero. Any given day. I don't think he gets that kind of applause if he gives up, three earned runs and four and a third. Right. I think it's the fact that he held the Japanese team scoreless to that point, and that Czechia team was given it back just as good as they got against arguably the best team in the tournament at the time in Japan. But speaking of Japan, I think there's sort of two ways to bracket this in my mind right now. You look at the teams that overachieve, and you look at the teams that underachieve. Max, do you have a preference of which one you want to start with?
Let's start with the underachievers. Definitely, I think Team Japan. I think we were all expecting Team USA, Team Japan to run it back like they did 3 years ago. The fact that Venezuela was able to beat Japan near the end pretty decisively too
Mm-hmm.
was pretty shocking in my mind. I thought Team Japan had it in the bag the entire way, but Team Japan, unfortunately, they're just going to get the job done. Venezuela, as we see, spoiler alert, they won the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah.
But I think they had just an incredible team. I will say this though, especially what was shocking was not just that great outing that Czech pitcher had, But that bullpen too. I mean, that was a pretty competitive game up until the eighth inning, and then Japan blew the doors open. But that was a pretty competitive game all around. So it was great to see Czechia compete well. I think they definitely overachieved in some sense, especially in that game.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, the biggest one that really didn't catch a lot of people's eye was Team Italy, with the espresso and my boy Vinny in Kansas City hitting 3 home runs in one game. That was so fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, as far as underachievers go, I think you don't really need to talk about much past Team Japan. I think you could make an argument for a few different countries. I think you could say, with how much hype they had in the group stage, the Dominican Republic probably underachieved. Um, that being said, they went up against the eventual winners in Venezuela in the quarterfinals, right? And that was really the match that I think decided the tournament in a lot of ways. I think both of those teams had a lot of momentum, and it just came down to the fact that Venezuela had better late inning pitching. I would argue, if Michael Garcia, which is apparently how it's pronounced, hadn't hit basically 500, I think that Daniel Palencia should have been the MVP of that tournament. Honestly, didn't allow a single hit, struck out I think it was 9 batters in all his work. I know a lot of teams had said that they didn't want their players to be thrown back to back days, but credit to the manager Lopez there. He just put him back out in the best position. Omar Lopez, I think is his name, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Kept wanting to say Otto Lopez, but I'm like, no, it's a Marlins player.
we'll
Um,
get to the Marlins.
yeah, but yeah, I think he was lights out. He's definitely someone to watch in the big leagues as the closer for the Cubs this year. But yeah, Team Japan, I guess you can sort of see the places where Japan I think needs to improve to be consistently dominant, maybe like the U.S. is. I mean, obviously the U.S. has the inherent advantage of having the best players in the world available to them. I would argue, obviously Japan can only produce so many Shoheis. I think with the U.S. you have an inherent advantage considering the fact that there's just so many programs, so many players available in the U.S. compared to all these other countries. But for every Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Kodai Senga and Shota Imanaga, you have to remember that there's a very different style of pitching in Japan, and I think it was sort of exposed by the early aggressiveness of a lot of the Venezuelan hitters. Look at the pitch that Willie Abreu hit the deciding home run off of Hiromi Ito, I think is his name.
Mhm.
It was a
That was a
93.
bomb too.
It was a 93 mile per hour fastball right in his wheelhouse. I mean, I love Willier. I think he's going to have a great season, despite what people can see there with the Canadian flag and the Blue Jays jersey. I am a Red Sox fan. Um, so I'm looking forward to seeing Willier this year. But yeah, I think you were alluding to it earlier. We can talk about some of the overachieving teams as well with Team Italy. I mean, I sort of wanted to bring up Team Italy in a different context, but I mean, obviously a fantastic tournament to get to the semifinals, ultimately falling to the U.S., of course, but still giving them a battle there. And a lot of really fun players on that team. Jack Caglianone, I'm not going to say Caglione because it's just wrong. Um,
I would
Pasquant-
pronounce it like
yeah,
that. So knowing
Pasquantino,
me.
Sam Antonacci, who is competing for a roster spot with the White Sox right now. I don't know what the ultimate decision was. Um, I'm pretty sure he's going to start in AAA if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
But you know, all these guys that have big experience, representing their ancestral home in Italy, it was a lot of fun. The context I sort of wanted to bring it up in, I suppose that's sort of the segue that I was looking for. But how much how much stock do you put into Team Italy's success feeding into baseball becoming more of a thing in Italy?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you're taking a look at social media and some of the reactions in Italy, obviously the announcers were pumped. The crowd was pumped for Team Italy. I love Team USA. I love my country, but I will say when they were beating USA, I was like, let's go Team Italy. This is crazy. My boy Aaron Nola was shutting it down against Team USA. Probably going to be his best start of the entire year, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But that was great. Shout out to I think he's a Hall of pretty good player. Francisco Cervelli was managing the team, former Pirates legend. So that was
Former top
awesome to
prospect
see.
at the very least, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So that was great to see. Team Italy was just fun all around. I love the espresso thing that they had. I love that they put on the Blazers. I love that they just embraced
Hmm.
not just the team's identity, but just who they were. And that was incredible to see. You could tell that these guys were having fun out there, as opposed to possibly some other players who were there just to be like, yeah, I'll show up. Why not? Weren't taking it as seriously. But as you can see in the WBC in general, there was a clip that MLB had on their social media where a bunch of those players were saying that, hey, winning a World Baseball Classic, um, I wouldn't say it's better than winning a World Series, but I think in their perspective, especially coming from where they are, like look at Team Japan and Team the Dominican Republic, Team Puerto Rico, for example. Winning that tournament is as equivalent, if not to them greater, than winning a World Series because they're representing a country that's
Mm.
rich with culture and baseball culture in general. Um, and I think World Baseball Classic is great for growing the game in general. I have some friends of mine who don't follow the regular season as much, but they were glued when the World Baseball Classic was going on. Some of the best baseball we may see all year. I
Mm.
was telling you this when it was happening. There are times when the World Baseball Classic, for me at the very least, there are specific moments that seem much more hype in a way, and correct me if I'm wrong, than some moments we see in a World Series or in a playoff run for some of these teams. And you said it at the beginning, we were spoiled with great baseball this year. We were already spoiled. The
Mm.
expectations were high.
Mm.
And now we're starting, this 162, and I love watching it, but let's be honest, it's a grind, especially for the players playing every day. And
Yeah.
then you get to October. So it was just so fun to watch all around.
I think it's two different. It's coming from two different places. I think. Um, I would argue that outside of the U.S., the tournament probably meant more to the general populace. I think in Team Japan, Team Korea, Team Mexico, DR, Venezuela, Puerto Rico. I think this tournament meant a lot more than maybe to other places. Team Italy, Team Australia, Team US. I think there's still sort of like I think there's still an aspect of I don't want to be the guy to call it an exhibition tournament because it's not, and it's way more important than that. And baseball means a lot more than that. But I still think some people still view it that way. I mean, this is a perfect segue into I think the lack of the lack of seriousness that I think the U.S. treated this compared to the rest of the world. You want to talk about Mark DeRosa's mistakes? I mean, that's been talked about, but I also want to talk
That was
about like
brutal.
Tarek Skubal, right?
Yeah.
Prioritizing getting his bag in free agency next offseason rather throw in 3 innings against Great Britain. I say if you're gonna do something like that, you might as well not even show up. But you didn't see any of this with the other teams,
No,
provided
none
that they
that came
were
to
actually
mind.
allowed to participate. I know they had Carlos Correa and Francisco Lindor for Team Puerto Rico, a few other guys for Dominican Republic and Team Japan and all that. That the insurance companies wouldn't allow them to participate, more or less. But at the same time, it's fun baseball. It's great. It meant so much to Team Venezuela. It meant so much to the Venezuelan people. You could see that in the aftermath of the championship win. The parties in Caracas and the parties in the streets of Miami and all these different places, and it's a level of seriousness where even if the team loses, I think every team can say that they got something out of this, right? Team
Oh yeah.
Australia, even though they didn't make the playoffs, they got as close as they've ever been, and the future looks good there. The future looks like it's starting to come to fruition, and there's a lot of different ways of looking at it, but I think ultimately it's a different circumstance to the regular season. Regular season, of course, is a grind, but you're far more emotionally invested in your team, your local team, for lack of a better word. And it's true with MPP and the KBO. You can only be so invested in a team of all stars, for lack of a better word. I like watching Paul Skeens. I enjoyed him watching him for the Team USA. Didn't pitch the championship game, which I think says all you need to know about how Team USA views this tournament. But the Pittsburgh Pirates aren't my team, So like once the regular season starts, my my ability to care for Paul Skeens versus like a Garrett Crochet or Ranger Suarez even, um, it's a completely different animal, right? I can go to games at Fenway Park. I can follow my team throughout the whole regular season. It's a different investment. It's maybe a higher threshold of investment because it's over such a longer period of time. But I think given that buildup, I think people are just forgetting how hyped the playoffs are when your team's in it, right? I think that's what it comes down to. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's just sort of how I read it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up Ranger Suarez again, sniping him from my beloved Philadelphia Phillies. I appreciate that.
I had to bring it up. I did.
Of course you did, but no, I feel you, man. You really do not like Mark DeRosa. I like him on LB Central, LB Network, but I
Well,
think when he's
he can stay
managing,
there. I have no problem with him being there. I don't want to be managing Team USA, not even knowing what the score is half the time. I mean, the guy might as well
yeah.
be knitting a fucking sweater for his grandmother at this point. He'd be more useful doing that.
Yeah, well, the crazy thing too, because you mentioned Scooble, the crazy thing about Scooble is that he was there, he was 50-50 on being there, and then he was 50-50 on staying, and he went back to camp. And then for the championship, he's on the bench repping Team USA. It's like, bud, you just left a team and now you're coming back. Um, it's not like Dennis Rodman when he went to Vegas just to get away from it all and coming back to the
Except he
Bulls in
went to
the
Miami.
finals. I mean, he pitched one game. Granted, he pitched very well. Obviously, he's Tarek Skubal. But I think it just shows the kind of they're not taking it
If
too
if you're
seriously.
gonna do something like that, at least be honest with the reasons, though. Don't just be like humming and hawing about it and being like, "Oh, my team told me I had to come back," or whatever he ended up saying. It's like, no, you don't want to get hurt so that you can cash in on your back-to-back Cy Youngs in free agency, and that's completely understandable. But don't pretend like it's some sort of difficult choice for you to make, because I know it's not. I mean,
Yeah,
this guy had one thought in his mind the entire time, and he just shouldn't have shown up if he's going to be 1 foot in, 1 foot out like that, because it requires a certain level of buy-in, which is ultimately why Venezuela beat the U.S. I'm convinced,
yeah,
because every one of those players was bought in,
yeah. You're not
right?
wrong.
So
I will say this though about the Team USA's mentality. I don't quite frankly think they treated this tournament as seriously as many other teams since the World Baseball Classic first
yeah,
started 20 years ago.
yeah.
Um, I think they thought of it much more seriously in 13, and obviously that incredible run they had. Was it 13 or 17 that they won it?
That
Team
would have been
USA
17, I believe.
17, and that was a great team.
That was the
Um,
Adam Jones leaping catch
yeah,
in San
Petco
Diego.
Park. I
Yeah,
remember watching that live. I was so hyped for that. But in 23, I thought they took it seriously as well. Obviously, that image of Mike Trout walking out with the Team USA flag or just the American flag in general was incredible. He really was Captain America. Aaron Judge, you look, I'm in Boston. I have that bias. I just didn't buy it as much as I would
I
have
am.
liked. So. But
I'm
that's just
I'm
my bias, and I
I'm
grew up with
I'm
Mike Trout,
eating
not
I'm
necessarily
eating
Aaron Judge.
fantastic on the Aaron Judge hate right now. I'm
Yeah,
loving every second of it, and Yankees fans are just melting down. And when a Yankees fan melts down, it's always a great day.
you ain't gonna like my AL MVP pick, but we'll get to that later in the podcast.
Well, we will get to that later because I do have some caveats for that, just to make it a little bit more interesting for the people watching. But
Uh-oh.
let's move on from the World Baseball Classic. Let's close that chapter and eagerly await the 2030 World Baseball Classic. I believe it's going to be now, right? So
Mhm.
automatic balls and strikes. That's my next topic I wanted to discuss. Being introduced into the major leagues for the first time in 2026. Now, we've seen a little bit of it in spring training. I thought I'd give everybody a little bit of a primer for those who don't already know, and this might be something that even you, Max, can learn because I know I wasn't 100% clear on some of these things. But the rules are as follows: each team gets two challenges in a 9 inning game. Um, they actually get an extra challenge in extra innings as well. So if you're on zero, you get one. If you're on two, you get three, etc., etc. Right? Which I think opens the door for a lot of very interesting strategy in extra innings. Because maybe who knows if you're down to your last batter in extra innings and you still have three left, are you just going to challenge the last three pitches that you see? You know, we'll see. But um, challenges are also going to be included in the postseason. I know, like stuff like the Ghost Runner and extras in the regular season does not transport over to the playoffs. So I just thought I'd make that clear to everybody. Only the batter, pitcher, and catcher can initiate a challenge. It must be immediate, roughly within 2 seconds. That's more or less at the discretion of the umpire. They're not supposed to be able to make a move other than the tapping of the head. So, like, I saw a clip the other day. I can't remember which player it was, but he basically flipped the bat to himself after a call strike because he was had to throw it for like ball four. Flips the bat to himself, waits a couple seconds, and then does that. And the umpire says, "No, you flipped your bat, so that's no challenge because you made some sort of gesture or whatever other than that beforehand." So
Yeah.
I think that's going to be more of an umpire's discretion thing. Um, those are all the major things. Obviously, if you get a challenge right, it is retained. So theoretically, you can have two for the entire game. But Max, what do you think of this change overall? What are your initial thoughts?
I like it. Um, Mostly because might be a strange way of saying it. I think some of the good umpires or some umpires can, I guess, keep their job for sometimes because we've heard the talk for the past 10 years now of the possibility of robo umps. This could pave the way for that. We don't know. But I think it's good because and when you look back in history at some of the egregious strike three calls, where would we be in 2010 when Joe Nathan for the Rangers was striking out? Remember that Rays pitcher he struck out? It was like
Mm-hmm.
way outside,
Yeah,
and you just couldn't believe it. Where would we be with that? Um, I think it's good. I think it's been implemented in spring training pretty well. Um, so I like it because I think it could improve the game. I like that it's like less than 10, like it's like 10 seconds. So it doesn't take too much time
yeah,
because obviously, with the media and how like the different ways they cover it, with the strike zone, it's very clear. You're able to differentiate it. And some of it can quite clearly be either a strike or a ball that a player gets wrong. Um, the thing though that could get me some pause is like, what if it is just like the player thinks like, oh, that's clearly a ball, but it's like, nope, it's right on the. It's actually almost, you know, it's well in the zone. So there could be a possibility like that. That managers would probably have to insult their players like, hey, you may think this is strike three, but it's
yeah.
got to be, pretty clear that it is. So, or ball four, or anything like that. So that's how I view it. But I think it's good because I think they did some version of it last year um, but I think the fact that they're going to implement it into the regular season, I think it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
The way that you described it, it kind of sounds like how they're doing. some of the not necessarily like the replay rules as we see, but like the pitch clock, for example, or like umpire's discretion. The thing that came to mind when you said that is, when a player calls time, we've seen many instances of batters like saying, "Hey, I want time, I want time." The umpire's like, "Nope, we're going to play forward." Um, so it's interesting to see how that works out. Maybe some games are decided based off that. We're going to have to wait and see. I will say this though, when if it was going back to WBC, if Mason Miller, or whoever he struck out in the WBC against Dominican Republic, because let's be honest, that clearly was not strike three. That was way below the needs. If they had the ABS, obviously the at bat would continue. And who knows what would happen after that? So
Yeah,
I
because
think it's a good change. I think it's good.
I think it was Geraldo Perdomo that he struck out on that pitch.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, overall, I think it's a positive. I think this is a lot like the pitch clock, where I think the hardcore traditionalists are probably the only one that's opposed to this. I think at the end of the day, everybody wants the call to be correct, and I think this is the best way to ensure that the more egregious calls are taken out of the game, which I think everybody wants to see, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any skill gap or any sort of fun in an Angel Hernandez disaster class, right? Or a CB Buckner Aster class, if you want to call
Or
it that.
back in the day, Joe West
Yeah,
masterclass.
well, I had no problem with Joe West, honestly, because he was just fucking ancient by the time I got to see him.
Yeah.
He'd been
I mean
umpiring for
that
like
Mark
25
Burley
years
thing.
now.
That's another
But
story. But yeah.
yeah, I think this is it'll lead to greater umpire accountability as well. And as the more stats we get, the more we realize that we're basically at as good as a human being can get in terms of umpiring. I think with the ABS, it's a great middle ground where I don't want to completely get rid of human umpires because I love the skill of pitch framing from like some of the best catchers out there, like Patrick Bailey or Martin Maldonado or any of these guys, right? I love that skill. I enjoy seeing a borderline pitch go your way, and obviously it's devastating when it doesn't, vice versa. But I just think it's one of the more enjoyable things in baseball to freeze a batter right on the black, and like maybe it was technically like a centimeter outside of the zone, but you're probably not going to challenge that if you're a hitter, right? And so there's still a skill gap when it comes to that kind of thing, and pitchers can still nibble and they can still go for location instead of just pure speed. Because let's be honest here, if you have purely robo umpires, what's going to happen? You're just going to get a bunch of guys that throw triple digits, pumping strikes. They're not going to try to nibble. They're not going to try to put it in spots where players can't barrel it up, like the Kyle Hendrickses and the Javier Assads and all these guys are just going to go away, and all we're going to be left with is triple digit injury prone pitchers, and that's
And
just not
also,
fun.
where would the game of baseball be without Lou Piniella kicking some dirt in the umpire
Yeah,
shoes?
exactly.
Where would
And
like Bobby Cox and Earl or
and
Earl Weaver from the Orioles?
yeah, to allude to your point earlier, when it comes to like it's gonna be sort of irritating when some players let their ego get the better of them and they challenge pitches that they probably shouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised if managers go out and say you are the designated challenger. If you think a ball is outside, you call it. You call it. It's probably gonna end up falling on the catchers. I I don't think I've seen a single pitcher actually challenge a pitch in spring training, which is probably smart because both from an ego but also an a vantage point of view. Obviously, the pitchers being a little higher up, they're sort of falling to one side with their pitching motion whenever they're throwing. They're probably not very good judges of where a pitch actually ended up. Um, I think a guy like Tristan Cassis would benefit enormously from this because I can't tell you how many times early last season Tristan Cassis was called out on pitches that were outside of the zone, especially low. And I know he has a good enough eye where he can challenge that and feel pretty confident about it. And so I think it's definitely going to be a skill gap. I don't think it's going to be like a demonstrable one. I don't think on base percentages are going to go up league wide or anything like that. But it's going to be a really interesting turn and into the 21st century, if you want to call it that, in baseball. And I'm all for modernizing as long as it doesn't get rid of the heart of the game, which I don't think it will. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll see what happens. But
As long as baseball parks have beer and hot dogs, I don't think the heart of the game's gonna go anytime soon.
exactly. Although the heart of the game is getting tested with these 999 challenge boxes. Have you seen these?
I have. I've seen it.
Yeah,
I've
they
seen
got
some of the new
these
food
little
they got at
lunchable
Fenway.
sized hot dogs, and you got these little shot glass beers, and it's like they give you one tall boy a Miller Lite, and it's supposed to go. Supposed to go for all nine little cups, and it's just yeah, it's just
Yeah.
diabolical.
Speaking of which, have you seen what Fenway Park's doing this year with some of the new food they got? They got like a lot of lobster
I did
stuff.
see a notification. I did not see anything, but I'm interested to see what comes up about that. So
Interesting to try it, but would I spend $50 for it? Probably not. We'll see how many
I mean,
beers I am into
50
it, but
bucks
we'll
for one
see.
beer at some point, sure. I'm gonna assume.
That's what gets me
But
Blue Moon. I'll do it. I'm
yeah,
not sponsored by them, but we love it.
but yeah. Anyway, let's move on here, Max, to the middle of the sandwich, so to speak, the big meaty season prediction. Right, we're gonna go division by division. We're gonna say who we think is going to win the division, and we're also gonna maybe look at some over and underrated teams that might nab a wild card out of nowhere, or out of relative obscurity, I should say. Teams that might be a little ranked a little high by some of the experts, in my opinion, and maybe talk about some players along the way, and sort of reason why we think teams are going to win certain divisions. But let's start, as always, with the American League East, my division, my beloved Red Sox. These guys here, the Rays, Yankees, Orioles. Max, let's just cut right to the chase. Who you got as winning? Who do you got as the winner of the AL East?
What you're wearing right now, I think the Blue Jays. I think the Blue Jays have gotten better. I think now in the off season, especially this time around, they've gotten much better. That was huge re-signing Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They were so close to winning the World Series so many times last October, early November. I still think this is a World Series contending team. They've gotten so much better. They got Dylan Cease now. Now, while they don't have Bo Bichette, I still think that lineup is quite nasty. um, Ernie Clement had a great World Series. I think he's going to be solid this year. Darton Varsho was fun to watch. So I do think it's ultimately, in my opinion, going to be the Blue Jays.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's going to be followed by Boston because I think
Mm-hmm.
Boston has a great starting rotation. I'm not 100% sold on some of the bats that they have, but I still think they got a decent enough bullpen as long as the defense is able to be prudent and be just fine at playing league average defensive. I think they could win maybe 90 games. Last year they won what, 89 games, and so I think they'll definitely get within 90 games again this year. They'll probably get right at it, but I do think the Blue Jays ultimately win. I think they've just gotten so much better in the offseason already.
Yeah. So the way I think I might want to do this just before we kind of go all the way down. I'll give you my. You give me your one. I'll give you my one. You give me your two. I'll give you my two, and we'll go down the division like that. So you've gone through two, Blue Jays and the Red Sox. I myself am going to flip that. I think the Red Sox are going to win the division this year, and that might sound like a bit of a homer pick, but let me give you my reasoning. Is there a better pound for pound rotation out there in the big leagues right now, Max? Do you think you could tell me straight that there's a better rotation than Crochet, Suarez, Gray, um, I'm blanking right now, Bayo, and Early, who, by the way, we just found out that Early made the opening day roster, and he will be the fifth starter, with Oviedo being the long reliever behind him, apparently. So I think we saw flashes from early last year. He's going to be one of the best fives in the league. Bayo last year, great ERA. I think he overperformed his peripherals a little bit, but he's still tinkering with his pitch mix. And I think if he can marry everything all together, he could easily be where he was last year, which is a fantastic four starter. Suarez, he's been a little rough in spring training, but I think he's just getting dialed in. I think he'll be just fine. He's going to be a great player for us. I love his stuff mix. Doesn't get a ton of strikeouts, but keeps the ball on the ground. I'm all for that. Sonny Gray has always been all reliable. Um, 36 years old does make me a little nervous, but I've always loved Sonny Gray. And I think just having that veteran presence there for guys like Early and Tolley when he comes up, and that's going to be fantastic. And then, of course, Crochet, who is, probably the 1B to Tarek Skubal's 1A in the AL right now in terms of pitchers. So I can't see much better rotation in baseball than that. Not even to speak about the lineup, which I think top to bottom is very, very solid. I don't think there's a lot of holes in there. Maybe you could argue that there's not a ton of realized superstardom, but Roman Anthony, of course, leading it off, playing right field, is going to be that guy. Left field, right field, depending on the day. You got Duran, you got Story and Wilson, Contreras, and you got Meyer who can show a lot, and got Durbin who's a very solid, like I think consistently 3-win player. All these players combined to one very solid team, and I think ultimately what you need right now is just a solid team up and down. I think if there is a weakness, it's probably in the bullpen, but I think that's maybe me projecting a little bit of a downslide from Chapman from last year, but it's almost because he can't possibly be as good as he was last year. So
And Whitlock could be still solid for you guys in the bullpen.
yeah. Speaking of second place, though, the Blue Jays, I agree with a lot of what you said there. Vladdy Guerrero Jr., obviously the heartbeat there. No Bichette, but I think there's a lot of good things to like. Addison Barger, I like a lot, is as like a power hitting lefty bat, and you know that is a very interesting rotation. With Cease and with Gossman and all those different guys, and I'm interested to see how Cody Ponce does in his return from the KBO as well. I I'm a little hesitant about putting them second. I think it's probably the smartest place, but I think guys like Springer, he sort of came out of nowhere to have one last swan song. But I'm more so concerned that this could be like a 2021 Joey Votto type mirage where he has one great season and then he just sort of follows the natural decline of things as he gets older. He's going to be 37 years old this year. Kirk, I like a lot. Okamoto, I like a lot. But Ernie Clement, Jimenez, Jesus Sanchez, I just don't know if I believe in any of these guys enough. I mean, they haven't proven any ability to be a consistent league average bat. I know Clement had an amazing playoffs, but he just strikes me as sort of like a super utility guy, so that'll be interesting. But who do you have finishing third in the AL East, Max?
You're not going to like this answer. I think it'll still be New York.
Mm-hmm.
They are running it back. They are an older team, but they still have Aaron Judge and they still have Max Fried, who pitched very well last year, and I think will continue to do so this year. I like what Will Warren was doing this spring training. I think he looked pretty decent for them.
Mm-hmm.
The Yankees, I think, are still a solid team. They're a team that will always make the playoffs, except every other 10 years they don't make the playoffs. So I think in this case, they will win third place. I think mostly because they're the Yankees, and unfortunately, Garrett Cole is going to be back this year. We'll see how he does. Me personally, I don't care, but as you know,
He's
my
wrong.
Garrett Cole bias. But we'll see how the Yankees do. I mean, we'll see what happens with them. I definitely think they'll place third
Yeah.
because I still think, even though they have re-signed a lot of their guys back, it's essentially the same team. It's still managed by Aaron Boone, who
Mm-hmm.
I personally love as a Yankee manager because he's not the brightest manager in baseball. But for me, it's still New York.
I don't know if you're ready for this, Max. And again, you're gonna call me biased, but I'm shooting my shot here. I think Baltimore is gonna finish third this year, and I'm gonna tell you why. I am a big fan of this lineup, and I think there's a lot of power upside here. There's a lot of superstar upside in this lineup as well. And I think I'm sort of projecting ahead a little bit. Maybe this isn't quite the year that Baltimore realizes that potential, but you still have Gunnar Henderson, who is probably a top 5 player in the American League when he's on. Dealt with some injuries last year, didn't quite show what he'd shown in 2023, where he finished top 3 in AL MVP. Taylor Ward, they acquired from the Angels, hit 30 home runs last year. I'm not saying he's going to do that again, but he's still going to be a very solid addition to this lineup. Pete Alonso, right? That's an automatic 30 plus homers there. I don't care who you are. Adley Rushman, he's dealt with injuries last couple of years, but if you look at his stats under the hood, his zone contact rate, squaring the ball up well enough, I think if he just finds some health, which I think he can with the next guy I'm going to mention, Samuel Basayo, backing him up a catcher, letting him DH a lot of days, sort of giving his body a little bit of a rest. Because I mean, I think everybody realizes who's a baseball fan the grind of being a catcher for a full year. But I mean, Samuel Basayo. Let's talk about him for a second. I mean, this guy. Spoiler alert: big time rookie of the year upside, gonna mash a ton of homers. He's shown he's only 21 years old, and he already has some MLB service time under the belt. Colton Cowser, Kobe Mayo, Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Beavers, Ryan Mountcastle, all very solid sort of lineup glue that you can rely on there as well. And don't forget Kobe Mayo, Colton Cowser, former top prospect upside as well. So the problem they've always had has obviously been their pitching. But I think this rotation that's more solid than people give it credit for. Trevor Rogers was electric last year, had like a 1.81 ERA, I believe, and a somewhat abbreviated season, mind you, but he was excellent. Kyle Bradish, Shane Baz, Chris Bassett, Zach Eflin, all of these are very serviceable, solid MLB pitchers. Max, when's the last time you can name a 1 through 5 Orioles rotation where you can say each one of these is like a big leaguer? I can't remember the last time I could say that. You know, and of course Ryan Helsley they brought in to be their closer. Probably since Felix Bautista, this is the first one that you can say is this is a big league all star closer that they have. And unfortunately, Bautista is probably going to miss the full season with I believe it was a shoulder injury. It was pretty devastating. So that's unfortunate, but you still have Keegan Aiken, Yennier Cano. I just like this roster up and down. I didn't even mention Jackson Holiday, who's going to start the season with a little hamate injury, but he should be back before May. He has some positive upside. He was the number one prospect in baseball for over a year. So I mean, what's not to like about this team, really? And I mean, what's not to like? Max, who you got in fourth?
You just said Baltimore, and I agree with everything you said. I think it'll be fun to see how Pete Alonso does. I'm glad he's not in the NL East anymore. I'll tell you that. But we'll see how especially how he adapts to just giving yards in general. Obviously, they've had it for the past few years now. Something going on with that left field. How they're bringing it back, and then they're bringing it forward, and then bring it back again. So we'll see how he adapts to that. But it'll be interesting to see how Adley Rushman, if he's able to still be, which I think he is, still one of the best catchers in baseball. We'll see how he adapts this year. Orioles team last year was, and especially, and the year before, obviously was a bit disappointing. We thought they were on the verge of doing something special. Obviously, the last couple of years, not the case. I think now that they have invested smartly and just all around their offense, their pitching, as you just said, I can't think of a time because the Orioles, especially when we were growing up, except that one year in 2014, were not, a team that was to be threatened with. And now I think they still are. I still think they will obviously be better than they were than last year, but I'm just not sold on them yet. I'm just one of those people that have to see it to believe it.
Mhm.
So that's why I got the Orioles at
Yeah.
fourth place for now.
So I'll speed things up a little bit so we don't take too long here. But fourth place, I have the Yankees. I think part of the reason I have them in fourth place is I
You hate
just
them.
think the bottom of their lineup has the potential to be a real hindrance for them this year, right? Let's run down the list here, Max. Ready? Trent Grisham. Outside of last year, what has he done in the big leagues with his bat? Not a whole lot. He's been a sub 100 WRC plus player for a lot of his career. There's potential that at age 30 it could be a bit of mirage, right? Obviously, Aaron Judge, Cody Bellinger, Ben Rice, Jazz Chisholm. I like all these guys. These are all plus.
You like Jazz Chisholm?
I think he has a lot of utility. He can steal bags, he can hit homers, he'll be fine. I don't like him
Interesting.
so much as an entity when it comes to clubhouse endeavors, but Giancarlo Stanton, Jose Caballero, Anthony Volpe, Ryan McMahon, Austin Wells. I mean, if any of those guys hit above 240 this year, frankly, I'll be amazed. Right, and there's so many strikeouts in that five players, and this I mean you're also going to get a ton of strikeouts from Grisham and Judge. I just think there's so much potential, and Rice he's not strikeout averse either. There's not a lot of contact upside in this lineup, and I think if you get bad BABIP luck, this lineup could easily end up being outside of Judge, of course, being maybe closer to league average than I think a lot of people are giving it credit for. Not to mention, let's talk about this rotation really quick, right? Garrett Cole's coming back from Tommy John. What's we don't really know what's going to happen though. He's going into his age 36 season. Historically speaking, people that come back that old from Tommy John aren't going to have the best of times. Outside of him, Max Fried, obviously a great player, but what do we know about Cam Schlittler, the Judas of Boston, Will Warren, and Ryan Weathers? That's a pretty uninspired rotation, if you ask me. And I know Carlos Rodon is going to start the season on the IL. We don't really know what that's going to hold either. He's probably not going to be back until May.
I will
So,
say this about Ryan Weathers, not to interrupt you.
yeah,
He was fun to watch in Miami.
yeah.
I like watching him pitch in Miami, but
I like Ryan
obviously
Weathers
we'll
a lot
see how
too.
he adapts in New York.
But yeah, I was gonna say, but are we confident that he can be like a top notch Yankees pitcher? I mean, I've seen
We don't
better
want
pitchers than
like
him get eaten up by that place.
we don't want him to like turn into like an AJ Burnett type thing who
No,
goes to my who was
but
in,
but
then the Florida Marlins
even outside of
and
that,
can
let's
adapt to a big league market and then it goes to a small
yeah.
market team.
But one last point before we get to our fifth place teams, who we have the same team, so we can just talk about it in tandem. Their closer was cut by the Pirates last year. The Pirates,
He ain't
like
cooking anymore, David
no,
Bednar.
I mean David Bednar, he showed a lot with the Yankees last year for sure, but he got cut by the Pirates last year. Are we just gonna forget about this, like as a baseball fan group? Like, there's no guarantee that this guy's going to be a good closer this year. He could very easily put up a 7 ERA in April like he did last year and get cut again. And then who do you have? Camilo Duvall. Same problem with the Giants. He got cut by the Giants. Like Jake Bird. Jake Bird barely made the roster with the Rockies a couple years ago. This is the precipice is right. It's right here for the Yankees, right? And they just got to go one down, and all of a sudden they're just Aaron Judge and a bunch of other guys.
It's a house of cards. It's
Right.
definitely a house of cards.
But anyway, let's go last team in the AL East. Tampa Bay Rays for both of us. Spoiler alert, but I mean, if you've been paying attention, it's not really going to be a surprise. Max, what about the Rays this year makes you think that they're going to be a last place team?
Uh, to put it simply, I mean, this is going to be the most obvious sense in the world. I think just the other four teams looking into this year are better.
Yeah.
I don't think the Rays are going to be, god awful by any means. I still think
No.
they'll win, mid 70s. I think they're still going to be As always with the Rays, a fun team to watch. Not a lot of people think about how great Tampa Bay is in terms of the team they are, but they still have a top-notch organization there. They still have Kevin Cash,
Mm.
one of the best managers in modern baseball history, in my humble opinion. They still got my boy Junior Caminero. They still have Drew Rasmussen. They still got some of these great players that not a lot of people
Well, they
will
also still
watch.
have my boy Jonathan Aranda, who I
Exactly. The
love.
Rays have a lot of fun players. So I think, they'll still be a fun team to watch. Like I said, they're not going to be like the Colorado
I'm
Rockies
just gonna
last
run
year,
down their
but they're
lineup
going to be
really
great.
quick, Max.
They're still going to be decent.
I remember that this. You think this is a lineup that can challenge the AL East? I know the Rays pull something out of their ass every single year. They pull a winning record out of their ass every year. Yeah, Yandy Diaz, Aranda, Caminero, all great players. I think we can agree on that. But Cedric Mullins in the year of our Lord 2026, Jake
It's
Fraley,
over.
Richie Palacios, Nick Fortes, Chandler Simpson, and Carson Williams. That's the rest of your lineup. Now, Simpson and Williams, you can sort of debate on their upside. Simpson has the potential to steal 50 plus bases in any given year, provided that he can get on base enough. I mean, he's not going to hit for any pop whatsoever, so we'll see. Carson Williams, he's got some major flaws in his bat, but he's a top prospect. So who knows? But pitching wise, I just don't know what to make of this. Drew Rasmussen, All Star last year. Joe Boyle, he has got some of the best stuff in the league, but he doesn't know where it's going most of the time. Steven Matz, Nick Martinez, couple of safe veterans, and then I don't know if you remember this guy, Shane McClanahan. I mean, where did he come from? Like he's been racking up frequent flyer miles in the hospital for the last few years. Like, what is
But
your
when he's
initial
on the
reaction when
mound,
you hear
he's fun
that?
to watch.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's easily one of the best pitchers in the AL when he's right, but he hasn't been right since 2022. So, I mean, I think we could both agree Ray's last place for all the reasons that were listed ahead. But
Not because they're bad, but because the other four teams are just
I would say
simply
that's the
better.
best way to put it. So let's move on to the AL Central. Let's keep things ticking over here, so we don't go past our time too much here. But what are you thinking, Max?
I'm thinking Detroit. I don't think they'll collapse like they did last year. I still think Detroit's great. Obviously, Scooble. Casey Mize they still got, but I do think the addition of Framber Valdez was big for them.
Mm,
Um, Obviously, I think now because, as you mentioned at the top of the show, the whole Tarek School situation, I think he will obviously compete for a Cy Young again this year. He's going to have another career year. So that way the Pirates can, give him a lucrative contract or he goes somewhere else.
mm.
I still think they got a pretty decent offense. But I also think Detroit's pitching will win out, especially in that division. I think obviously AJ Hinch, incredible manager. So I think this is the year that they do get the division, but they don't collapse like they did a bit last year
Yeah.
with the Guardian situation.
So my number one pick for the AL Central, and I will admit that this was colored a little bit by the Team Italy performance in the World Baseball Classic, and I understand that's not the greatest competition out there, but with how good Pasquantino and Caglianone played, how can you not love the Royals? The Royals are my pick for the American League Central crown here. Michael Garcia, I am very very high on this guy. I think he's going to hit over 300 this year. I like him a lot. Bobby Witt Jr., the second best player in the American League by basically any metric you can think of, right? Vinny Pasquantino, this year All Star, calling it right now. Salvador Perez, Unk still got it. Unk still got that motion. All right, he's still killing it. He's still leading Team Venezuela. He's no matter how you slice it, he's at least going to be a very positive um, influence there. Jack Caglianone, if he gets to where he can get as a hitter, even if he gets to like the 60th percentile outcome this year, he's still a 30 plus home run guy, which is something that this Royals team has desperately needed for the last few years, right? Just another guy like Bobby Witt who can drop 30 home runs on you in a year. Jonathan India, I've always had a soft spot for him ever since his Rookie of the Year campaign with the Reds. Some of you might remember. Um, I think he's just a solid everyday guy. Carter Jensen, very intriguing prospect, had a great showing last year in the last few months. Isaac Collins was no slouch with the Brewers last year, and then I guess Starling Marte is there. Um, but I really want to talk about that rotation. Cole Reagans. People are forgetting that this guy's like a top 5 pitcher in the American League. I know I've said that about like 10 different pitchers so far in the podcast, but I like him a lot. Waka, Lugo, Bubich, Noah Cameron. That's about solid as you can get. Matt Strom, former Philly. Lucas Urseg, John Schreiber. I like all those guys. Carlos Estevez. I'm a little on the closer, but overall I think it's a very solid team. But Max, who you got as your second place team in the American League Central?
I think Cleveland. I think Cleveland's still a pretty decent team. Obviously, Jose Ramirez, top player in baseball in my home, and obviously, I think what Steve Voigt has done with that team, filling the void that Theo left.
The Voigt,
Um, what's that?
the Voigt.
Exactly the void. Um, I still think Cleveland's going to be great. I think they will still compete with Detroit game for game in September to get a division spot. So my money's on Cleveland for second place. I think just this team that they have still is great. The players that they have are, still great. So, and Cleveland's a fun team to watch, especially once we get closer to fall. One of the best teams to watch. So, my money's on Cleveland second place.
Yeah, second place for me, Detroit. For a lot of the reasons that you mentioned before, I think they got a fantastic rotation. I'm a little iffy on their lineup. I don't think Labor Torres, Colt Keith, Dylan Dingler, Parker Meadows, Javier Baez. I don't think those are 5 hitters that are the picture of health when it comes to a lineup. Now, Torkelson, McGonigal was just named to the opening day roster as well. Kerry Carpenter, Kerry Bonds, he's great. And Riley Green, I'm a big fan of as well. But outside of those guys, and we still don't know what we're going to get from McGonigal in the big leagues. There's going to be a little bit of a period of transition. But Scooble, Valadez, Flaherty, Mize, and then I guess you can throw Verlander in there. Interesting. Kenley Jansen as their closer. I'm not as interested in. Um,
Will
you know,
Unk still have it?
I like Will Vest, Tyler Holton, Drew Anderson, all very interesting players, but we'll see. Third place for you, Max. Who you got?
It will be Kansas City. I guess I'm just not too sold on them because I think I'm still thinking of how they played last year, and how it was, kind of disappointing, especially the year that they had in 24, which was really fun to watch. I think it was just incredibly disappointing. I don't think they'll be back to that spot yet. I think they will next year, but I just am not as sold on them because I think Lugo, I had some high expectations, didn't exactly meet those expectations. Cole Reagans is still great,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
I do love that team. Obviously, Bobby Witt, love him. Who doesn't love Bobby Witt Jr.? He's my favorite player in Kansas sports in general. There's that. There's the Philly bias in me. But I do think that while the Royals will definitely win 80 plus games, I just don't think they're going to be as good as a Detroit would be in that division.
Let me ask you this: do you think it's more likely that the Royals win 85 games or the Guardians win 85 games?
That's tough. I still think the Guardians because I think
Mm-hmm.
they still got a young scrappy team in Cleveland,
Well,
and
um,
I still think they'd be good.
yeah. Speaking of the Guardians, my what are we on? Third place team in the AL Central is the White Sox. That's right. Um, yeah, I'm gonna make you do a spit take really quick. I
Buddy hates
like this lineup
Cleveland.
a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I really like this White Sox lineup. I think they've done an excellent job at salvaging something from nothing. I think this White Sox team is gonna surprise a few guys. Chase Mydroth, I like him a lot. Colson Montgomery, we saw what his upside looks like last year. Miguel Vargas, I think he's got something. Murakami, Your guess is as good as mine, but the 30 home run potential is there. Austin Hayes, he's been an all star in the past. It's been a while. Benintendi. Lenine Sosa, I like him a lot. Edgar Caro, promising young player. I just think that there's some parts to like here. Luis Angel Acuna as well. He's going to start in the opening day roster. Sam Antonacci, who we saw with Team Italy, all hustle. You know, like there's a lot to like here, and the lineup, the rotation, the less said the better. But there's some positives. Maybe if you want to squint your eyes, Shane Smith was an All Star last year, but he regressed heavily. Anthony Kay coming back from the KBO. Can he be a plus? Eric Fetty, who knows? But Kyle Teal, he's starting the season on the IL, but he'll be back pretty soon, I've heard, and he's a plus hitter there. Maybe this is just me trying to be different and trying to be edgy, but I like the White Sox for third place. Who you got in fourth, Max?
I got the White Sox for those reasons. I don't trust Jerry Reinsdorf to put up a somewhat competitive White Sox team, but I definitely think they'll be in fourth place. I think they will vie for 70 wins at the very least, exactly for those reasons. Uh, I'm biased. I would love to see a little bit of an Andrew Benintendi redemption tour. Um, but obviously, Murakami, everyone had eyes on him this offseason. It was incredible that he signed to Chicago. I think the vibes are pretty high on the South Side right now. Shane Smith, I still think will um, yes, he digressed last year, but I still think he'll be solid for the White Sox. They clearly have made a lot of improvements, and I think it shows in the offseason talent that they signed. So I definitely think the White Sox are going to be in fourth place. I don't think they're there yet in terms of like I don't think they're going to be better than Cleveland, for example, but I do think that this is a team that's going to be really fun to watch, and quite frankly, a lot of people should pay attention to them this year because I think they're nearing the path. We're kind of closer to
Yeah.
what the hype was for the 21 White
They're
Sox.
not going to be a
So
contender this year, but I like to think the look of them. My fourth place pick will be the Guardians. Um, Jose Ramirez is the greatest superstar in baseball. Not just because of his abilities, but because he's been so loyal to an organization that I think has shown very little to be loyal about. If I'm being honest, nobody would have blamed him for leaving in free agency or wanting a trade. But no, he's stuck with it, so I can appreciate that. Stephen Kwan, I like. Chase DeLauder, Bo Naylor, but I just don't think there's enough juice in this lineup to really like where they're gonna head. They do have some intriguing prospects though, so we'll see what happens with that. Like the rotation a bit. Bybee, Gavin Williams, Slade Ciccone is apparently how you say it, Ciccone, and Joey Cantillo, Parker Messick. Solid rotation all around, but I don't think there's any like star potential there. And then Cade Smith is probably one of the best closers in the game. But how useful are you as a closer if you're only closing out 75 games in a year? You know, 75 wins, I should say. So you're probably getting what 25 saves, maybe something like that. But I don't know. That's sort of my opinion. I think we have the same last place team again, Minnesota Twins. Um, Max, do you want to take the reins here and give me your rundown on what you think the season's gonna look like there?
they're just selling the team at this point. I mean, they really got nothing to go
Yeah,
for. They're
I
they're
mean,
probably going to trade
there's
Joe Ryan at the deadline.
there's a
Is
couple
my
of guys that I
prediction.
think you could look at, like Royce Lewis and Luke Keeschel, Byron Buxton, Matt Wallner, and be like, yeah, there's some upside there, you know. But yeah, it's ugly. It's ugly, man.
Not looking great.
It's a matter of when, not if, they trade Joe Ryan this year. Mick Abel, former Phillies prospect, maybe he can do something, but I mean,
My boy,
you got a
Mick Abel.
36-year-old Taylor Rogers as your closer. I mean, eh, yeah. Well, we don't
I
need
hear you.
we don't need to dwell on the Twins all that much. Um, let's move on to the AL West here. Who do you have taking the crown there?
Give me Seattle. Give me Seattle again. I'm biased, obviously. Got some family members who are from Washington State, so a little bias in the household. But man, I was so devastated that they lost the ALCS. I mean, not that I was
Yeah, I
upset
mean,
that Toronto
I was
won it, but
too.
I was devastated
I was too.
because that Mariners team was definitely a Cinderella team. I mean, does Kyle Riley hit 60 plus home runs again this year? Most likely not, but I still think he's like best catcher in the game of baseball. It'll be interesting to see how J Rod is able to take a step forward. I mean, J Rod did have a 5.9 WAR last year, not something to scoff at. His OPS is quite strong at 807, so I still think J Rod, is still really good, and we'd love to see him play. Be interesting to see how this lineup is without a Eugenio Suarez, who's now back in Cincinnati. But Josh Naylor signed a huge, contract with them for an extension this past off season. So excuse me, it'll be interesting to see how he does. We'll see how the bottom of the lineup goes. But going to their pitching, I still think Logan Gilbert's going to be great. Brian Wu was really fun to watch when he was healthy last year.
Mhm.
Luis Castillo is getting older. You may have a little bit of regression, but he's still a solid player. A 3.82 ERA,
Yeah.
not great, but not awful either. I also like George Kirby still.
Mhm.
Um, I think what Andres Munoz did in the playoffs as well was fantastic.
Mhm.
Um, I still think that you got. I mean, this is a team that's, I think, in my opinion, the runaway favorite in the ALS, considering some of the other teams that we will mention.
Yeah.
But that's my reasoning for Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in lockstep for that. Seattle Mariners, I also have winning the American League West. I think the only thing that could possibly hold them back is the bottom of the lineup, like you alluded to. But I still like guys like Dominic Canzone, Cole Young. He's shown that he's added a little bit of pop in spring training so far. I know it's just spring training, very small sample size, but he's hit a couple dingers, and I think that's showing some upside that not a lot of people thought he had. Let's also not discount the fact that Victor Robles is coming back, and he had a pretty excellent season with the Mariners a couple of years ago, right? And former top prospect, who knows where he could be? He's a bit of a wild card there. I like Luke Raley against righties as well. I mean, Canzone and Raleigh are basically just Rayleigh, I should say, not Raleigh. That's two different guys. Are locked in as platoon bats for sure. But they also have my boy Rob Refschneider, as a countermeasure for those guys. So when Rayleigh or Canzone needs a rest at the DH spot, Refschneider, the killer of lefty pitching, is stepping in there, and that could be a positive. And of course, the rotation. Munoz is great. I also like Matt Brash and Jose A. Ferrer a lot. Eduard Bizardo is an interesting guy. But let's move on. Second place, Max. AL West. Who you got?
Who I have in the AL West may surprise you just a bit. I think this team just gets over the hump. Um, I think Texas. I like Texas. Still think they have a great lineup. We'll see how Corey Seager does this year. A little bit of digression, but he's still fun to watch, along with Jake Berger. I still like this lineup a lot, especially you love him just as much as me, Wyatt Langford. Let's take a look at the Fangraphs projection for Wyatt Langford this year. Um, his projection is going to be, 25 homers, still a solid year. He's going to have a 257 average. Wins WRC plus is going to be 125. So I think he'll have a better year, and I think more so exceeding expectations this year.
Yeah.
I think this is a kid that a lot of people are talking about, but I definitely think this is the year that we will see that potential with him. I do like the rotation a lot. Um, Still love Nasty Nate. It was smart for the Rangers to re-sign him. I think it was like a 3 year or 5 year deal in the 24 off season. Still think he had a decent year. His K through 9 is 850 innings pitched. This guy's going to be an innings eater, which is key for Texas because I'm not entirely sold on their bullpen, but I still think this starting rotation is pretty good. And obviously, um, one of the best pitchers of a generation. We'll see how DeGrom does this year, and especially Mackenzie Gore
Yeah.
was great seeing him pitch in Washington. We'll see how he
DeGrom
adapts to a
definitely
full
an
year.
interesting Hall of Fame case when his time comes for sure. But my second place team, Max. I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm someone who tends to like to separate religion and baseball in my own life. I don't necessarily like to pray for outcomes, but I will have to say a couple of prayers for visiting pitchers in Sacramento this year, because Athletics are going to take second place, and it's going to be coming almost entirely from this offense. Nick Kurtz, Shea Langoliers, Tyler Soderstrom, Brent Rooker, Jacob Wilson, Lawrence Butler, Max Muncy, Jeff McNeil, Denzel Clark. I dare you to find a better top five in a lineup anywhere in this league. I dare you. Jacob Wilson, who hit over 310 last year. Brent Rooker, multiple All Star. Tyler Soderstrom, future All Star. Shea Langoliers, future All Star. Nick Kurtz, who is probably going to be a up there with Aaron Judge in terms of home runs this year. I would say he he really is going to be a superstar, and I mean a full season of Nick Kurtz in Sacramento very easily could be 60 plus home runs. Less said about the line, less said about the rotation, the better. Not exactly an inspiring bunch, but I mean, if this team just wants to go pure offense, then I say let them, and I think that's very well what we're end up going to get from them. Who's your third place team, Max?
Third place team, I will say this, you know this, I hate this team more than the Yankees and Mets combined. It will be the Astros again. Obviously, this is a team that I don't know if they'll make the playoffs or not. I'm never going to count out the Astros for that, just for my own sanity. But I still think this lineup is still decent. Um, Jordan Alvarez, still a great player. We'll see how Correa does a full time year back in Houston. Um, Christian Walker, obviously, big free agent signing last year. Not exactly a great season he had this year, but we'll see if he improves. I still think a lot of people need to talk more about Hunter Brown. Obviously, you have your Crochets, you have your Tarek Skubals. However, Hunter Brown, third place in Cy Young last year, he was great. He had a 3.8 WAR, a 3.34 ERA, 183 innings pitched. Boy, that's a workhorse right there. So I like him a lot. I'm obviously without Framber Valdez, the rotation is probably going to take a step back, but I still think that this Houston team, well, clearly not as dominant as they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
it's still going to be, one of the tougher teams to beat in the AL West, in my humble opinion, to get over the hump. So I still think it'll be Houston for third place.
Yeah, third place for me. Gonna take your second place team with the Texas Rangers. I like I like Langford. I do. Um, Corey Seager, great player. Josh Young, Evan Carter. I think we haven't seen the best of them yet. Jock Peterson, Jake Berger. I honestly think that's almost unimaginable for them to have a year as bad as they had last year. Um, and Brandon Nimmo, who's just a solid everyday player. I think that the lineup itself, overall, its construction is just a very like 10th, 11th, 12th place lineup in the league, which I think is perfectly serviceable considering how great their rotation looks right now. Eovaldi, DeGrom, Mackenzie Gore, Jack Leiter, all four I think have all-star potential this year. Kumar Rocker is a bit of a wild card, but we've seen some very good flashes from him. Not to mention, Jacob Latz can kind of slot in as a five starter as well. He had a very successful 2.84 ERA in 8 starts, I believe, last year. So if he can replicate that, who knows? But you know, I also sort of like Josh Smith. He's going to have an everyday role this year now that Simeon was traded for Nimmo. I just think it's a pretty decent roster. Probably going to be kind of like middle of the pack in the AL, which is probably not good enough to win anything significant, but we'll see. Fourth place team, Max. Who you got?
It'll be the Sacramento A's of Las Vegas, Nevada, in
Mm-hmm.
fourth place. I agree 100% with what you said about that lineup. Man, that's going to be a fun team to watch in West Sacramento. Um, I thought when they got Jeff McNeil, incredible. Obviously, not the batting champion as he was in 22, but still a solid player as he was. Obviously, Kurtz, had an incredible year last year. Jacob Wilson was unreal. Still, just the way how he was in the first half. He was a right-handed Luis Ariz last year, and that was great. Soderstrom, they just signed him to an extension. Um, Brett Rooker, who is also going to be on the team for some time. Lawrence Butler is incredible. Denzel Clark made one of the best catches I have ever seen last year.
Him and Raphael are
Um,
going to be neck and neck in terms of best center fielder in the league.
100%. And Max Muncy is great. So this A's team, and they've been doing it for 20 years now, you think they're out, but the development system that they have and the Moneyball system that they have,
Mm-hmm.
obviously incredibly good. Shea Bangaliers is not talked about enough. He's still,
I have him
entering
on
his
a few of my
age.
fantasy baseball teams.
Exactly. He's got to enter his year 29 season. So, but he's still an incredible catcher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reason why I have them in fourth is because of their pitching. Because Frank, let's take a look at the starting rotation. Name me one A starter last year that had a sub 4 ERA.
There weren't any
Exactly, that's why.
starters. You
Um,
mean though? Yeah.
I mean starters, exactly. Um, Spoiler alert: there's only one player with a sub 4 ERA, and that player was Mark Leiter Jr., who had a 3.99 ERA. So very close.
What I
That's
will
me being
say
petty,
is the
but
visiting pitchers have to pitch there too.
exactly. We'll see how the ballpark is in Las Vegas, but
Hey, if the A's want to
obviously
score
Luis
11 runs and
Severino
give up 10, then
was
that's a okay with me.
exactly. Obviously Luis Severino was rock last year. Jeffrey Springs is also the case. So I do think if the A's had, I don't know, a new ballpark, which they will soon, or just investing in with the right rotation, then yes, this is a team that can absolutely make the playoffs. I'm just not convinced with the rotation that they have, that it's not going to get them over the hump. You
Next year
correct
in
me if I'm wrong.
Vegas, though, could be a very interesting team.
Yeah.
Um, Fourth place team for me, Houston. Basically, just got an Unk Fest and Jordan Alvarez. Um, Yanier Diaz, I don't think is cooked as people say. Isak Paredes, he's got some upside, but Altuve, Correa, Christian Walker. The average age of those three guys is like 33. So it's not looking great there. They have a few interesting guys like Bryce Matthews, but it's not a pretty picture. Outside of Hunter Brown, also like Tatsuya Imai could be interesting. Christian Javier could be interesting, but Mike Bros, Lance some colors. Their
I
closer
like
is
Javier.
their closer is Brian Abreu. I'm just sort of like the roster's just very you know.
Yeah,
I just don't really feel anything strong towards them, and I think for that reason they'll finish fourth.
I
And
hear
then
you.
again, lockstep. We've been 3 for 3 so far, with both of us agreeing who's going to finish in last place. And it's too bad because I really like this team. I do like the Angels, despite what Art Moreno wants to do to the franchise, which is basically just turn it into a safe haven for fans. Who cares about the baseball? It's just a fun day out in the park. Yay. You know?
I will
Zach,
say it would be fun to see a game in Anaheim.
I agree. I'd love to go out there one day, but screw Art Moreno, and honestly, screw every billionaire. So you know,
I'm just so sad. Well, the big win for the Angels this past offseason was your my favorite players, Anthony Rendon, hanging up them cleats, gone too soon, hanging up them
addition
cleats.
by subtraction.
Exactly. I do like Zach Neto. I like this team. I love Joe Adell. I like Josh Lowe. I like Logan O'Hoppe. Oh man, Mike Trout. Oh, I miss his prime. What the Angels have done to him. If anyone is a who's listening to this is a fan of Cars, he is like Lightning McQueen in Cars 3. Take that as you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or he's like my version of Bryce Harper in Philly, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll
Now,
probably
we'll.
get
It's
to that
kind
in
of
a different
crazy
episode.
though. It's kind of crazy though that they signed Kurt Suzuki to a 1 year manager deal.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
yeah, I mean, I still like the starting rotation. Yeah, I mean, I still like Kikuchi.
let's also talk about the fact
Reed
that Grayson
Devers is
Rodriguez has a dead arm already. By the way,
yeah,
and this is like their marquee addition this offseason.
yeah, exactly. So, and who knows? Maybe we'll see a resurgence of Alec Manoa.
Yeah, I
We'll
mean,
see how that goes.
I like Jose Soriano. I think he's going to be a good pitcher. Kikuchi is interesting. I mean, obviously Trout, Zach Neto, Joe Adell, intriguing. Logan O'Hoppe had a horrible year last year, but I still believe in the image. But Soler, Moncada, Adam Frazier, all those three players in your starting lineup in the year of our Lord 2026. Does that strike you as a serious franchise, Max? It doesn't strike me as a serious
They haven't
franchise.
been a serious franchise since 2014.
I mean, this is basically a who's who of like who was a one-time All-Star in the late 2010s, and here we
Minus Mike
are.
Trout.
Yeah, here we are like 8 years later, and the Angels are just collecting all of them. Kirby Yates, Drew Pomeranz, Jordan Romano. I
The
remember
Angels are still running the
I
2012 Miami Marlins strategy, and look what happened to Miami Marlins in 2012.
I remember when Ryan Zefferjon was a Red Sox prospect for about 10 seconds. I've heard he is a very intriguing arm out of the bullpen this year, but there's just
Uh,
nothing to get me excited,
hey, but
honestly.
let's remember Alec Manoa, a key player in that 25 World Series run, is on the
Yeah.
team.
Now I think, for the sake of time, let's just cap this as an AL only episode, and we can do the National League preview in another episode. So, with that in mind, let's do the major award. What was that, Max?
I was about to say smart. We
Yeah,
would have been here for the next 2 hours on
yeah.
that Phillies rant.
But let's just do the major award predictions for the American League only. So American League MVP, American League Cy Young, American League Rookie of the Year. We're going to exclude Aaron Judge from the MVP conversation because I think it's just
What is this?
look. It's just going to be boring. We're both going to say Aaron Judge. I almost said Mike Trout. What is this? 2021.
You
Um,
never know.
let's just say if it's not Aaron Judge, because we're both going to choose Aaron Judge if we want to be right. If we're not including Aaron Judge, who do you think it'll be?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Let's see. I believe this is the year that Bobby Witt Jr. will win the MVP. 295 average. He had 23 home runs. He had 38 steals. In my opinion, he's going to get 30-30, maybe 30-40. Um, his he is the best defender by outs above average last season. He's a great defender. He's literally got the five tools. Besides Aaron Judge, I don't know if Kyle Riley can repeat that season. And while I love Jose Ramirez, I think Bobby Witt Jr. is going to beat him this year to finally get that MVP. It's time that Bobby Witt Jr. had that MVP. He deserves it.
He was going to be my pick. I'm going to agree with what you're saying. I'm also going to say my dark horse pick for American League MVP is Nick Kurtz. I think if he hits 60 plus bombs this year, but stop him from winning. That's all I'm saying. If he out homers Aaron Judge and the batting averages are comparable, why not?
I'm surprised you didn't pick your chosen one, Roman Anthony, for that slot.
Nah, he ain't no Fred Lynn. Actually, I
Yeah.
heard Section 10 podcast for those who know. Coley Mick compared him to Fred Lynn, and actually, I really see it, which is not necessarily a bad thing because Fred Lynn was a great player until he got injured later in his career. But Cy Young Max, are we just gonna say same player?
Let's it. One, two, three. Ready?
One,
One,
two, three. Garrett
Garrett
Crochet.
Crochet.
Yeah. Now,
Only one vote separated him from Tarek Skubal last year. It was just one vote.
I think Tarek Skubal is just not going to be able to repeat his excellence. I think he'll still be a really good pitcher, but 3 straight years of Cy Young's voter fatigue is a thing.
When was the last time that happened?
It would have been Maddox, I think,
Yeah,
um, or Randy Johnson, one of the
McClemens.
two. But yeah, like Garrett Crochet is a strikeout machine. He's going to throw over 200 innings. He's going to strike out nearly 300 batters. He is the war pig, and there's nothing you can say about it. The guy's going to go up there. He's going to give you 3 different fastballs. He's going to drop a slider in there on you, and you're just going to be buckled out of your mind.
Will he have a 2.40 ERA this year?
I think it'll be a little worse than that. I'm thinking like 2 sevens somewhere around there.
Still good.
I personally think Scooble's gonna be low threes this year.
Ooh,
I
that'll be
I
interesting to
I
see.
I just there's something about it that I don't really I can't really put my finger on it. There's just something about being elite for 3 straight years as a pitcher in this day and age that I just find nearly impossible. And all it takes is for one or two things to go wrong. If Scooble is this concerned about his next contract before the season even begins,
That he's cursed.
what kind of mentality is going to have going into the season? How is that going to affect his actual outcomes? Now, that's probably me overthinking it, as I always do. I always like to choose the dark horse. I always like to choose the guy that nobody really sees coming. Not to say that Crochet is that, but my vote for Crochet, and so is yours. So rookie of the year, Max. Who you got?
Rookie of the year for the American League?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, find it. I just had my guy up here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it kind of comes as no surprise. Hold on, let me find it up here. I'm sorry. I just had it, folks. Kevin McGonigal of the Tigers. I'm horrible at pronouncing names, as you know. Um,
Just think of Harry Potter.
obviously, exactly. I'm thinking Harry Potter. That's why. Um, so he had a great offensive player. He batted 305 with 19 home runs and a 991 OPS at 3 major league levels. So he's been great across the board. Um, but I think this will be the year. It'll be interesting to see how Max Clark does this year and Murakami and how he plays. But I do think that Kevin, I can't pronounce his last
McGonagall.
name. I can't even pronounce my own last name
Yeah,
sometimes. I will tell you that. But he's going to be great this year, in my humble opinion. I think he'll be the rookie of the
yeah.
year.
I'm a big fan of Kevin McGonigal, but I'm also a big fan of Samuel Basayo, whom I caveated earlier. I said, spoiler alert, he's rookie of the year contender. That's my pick for rookie of the year in the AL. Think he can crush a few bombs. I think he's gonna hit around 260, 270. I think this Orioles team's gonna overachieve, and a lot of people are gonna be looking to give him his fair due as being a big part of that Orioles turnaround. But I think that about wraps up everything, Max. Unless you have anything else you'd like to add right at the end here.
Like I said, 24 hours away from Netflix
Mm-hmm.
with baseball. We'll see how
Absolutely.
that goes because they got the Usos from the WWE commentating on the game somewhat. But on the flip side of that, you know who else is going to be an analyst for the game? The
Mm.
greatest of all time, Barry Bonds. So totally pumped for that. Stay tuned to watch my 2 hour uninterrupted Phillies rant next episode. You may see some surprises as well for some of my picks
Yeah.
this year, especially the division. But it's going to be
Yeah.
fun.
As Max alluded to, next episode will be a full on National League preview. But for now, we will say goodbye and good night and happy opening day, everybody.